Thanks to Podster for hosting us, and also to our sponsors, Singapore Global Network. If you haven't heard of Singapore Global Network, now you have. And they promote the 3 Fs of Singapore. It's family, friends, and fans. So kind of just growing the network of Singaporean adjacent people around the world. And so thank you, SGN. I'm really excited to have Paul here with us. This is sort of our kickoff to AI Week. As you know, there's like a ton of events happening next week, and we wanted to catch everyone before they sort of got drowned in events. And so we got you first, lured you out here with some pizza, because I think security is something that is top of everyone's mind now that everyone can be a hacker, right? You and your best friend Claude are just out there scanning things, checking things out. And so I thought that Paul Hadjy, with his background in cybersecurity, would be a great guest for us to have. Founder Friends is an event series that Hustle Fund puts on around the world. It's always a one-on-one conversation with a founder, where we ask the hard questions about what it was really like to build a business, and in Paul's case, sell it. And share a little bit about the journey, because it's not all sunshine and rainbows. There's a lot of stuff you got to go through along the way, and how you can kind of survive that and thrive at the other end. So Paul, would love to just sort of have you introduce yourself a little bit. Sure. Tell us a little, your story arc from, Palantir to Horangi and now at Bitdefender.
Yeah, so myself, I'm originally American from Washington, D.C. So grew up there. After college, worked for government contracting, as most people do in Washington, D.C., doing sort of cybersecurity, information security at that time. Then met a small company at the time called Palantir. So that was in 2009. Spent about 7 years there, originally in DC, but made my way to the Middle East, Korea, Singapore, and I was also in New Zealand for a while. And then after that, I came back from New Zealand to Singapore, where I was working for Grab, where I led the information security team. This was around 2016. And kind of the idea for Horangi stemmed from that while I was there, which was when I was at Grab running security. Grab was cloud first company, and a lot of the security vendors in the region didn't really have the capability to support someone going on that journey, because cloud was pretty new in the region. Saw there's an opportunity to build a company around solving cloud security in APAC. And then that's when I started Horangi. So Horangi is the Korean word for tiger. So that was kind of like the emphasis of the company, as our first customers were actually in Korea, but eventually ended up headquartering in Singapore and then kind of growing the business from there. Over 8 years, we raised seed A, B, and then exited to Bitdefender, which is where I'm at now in 2023. Company was about 130 people, raised a little over $20 million in all APAC investors, and then exited to Bitdefender in 2023. Exciting journey. I very much simplified it, but look forward to kind of digging in more.
Yeah. So when you kind of reflect on that 8-year journey from sort of inception to acquisition, what would you tell that Paul in 2016? This older, wiser, more handsome Paul.
Yes, hopefully. A lot more gray hair now. Maybe it's age, maybe it's the journey. But I think a couple of things. One, like we went through multiple iterations of products. I think a lot of companies do that. I think I could have done that better. So originally we built a web application security scanner. So basically a modern form of Nessus, or at the time it was modern, essentially built into a website that would help companies kind of scan their sort of external attack surface. That we struggled to get traction with. We had some customers, but it was difficult to compete with the big boys. Then we kind of transitioned to source code scanning. So had that built into the same application. But really we had like a small consulting business. And in that consulting business, we're partnering with a lot of companies, helping them with security and compliance in the public cloud, which is kind of, again, the premise of the company. And then doing that, saw an opportunity to build cloud security posture management solution, which is kind of what the company was built around. But that took like a year and a half basically to go through those multiple iterations. I think having gone back and done it, like one thing I kind of advise a lot of founders to do is like spend a lot of time talking to your buyer in your space, talking to them about like what you want to build and how it's going to solve a problem for that. And I think a lot of people will talk to you about that and probably say it's a good idea. But one thing that I like to do to kind of take it one step further is like get them to basically sign a piece of paper that says that I'm willing to pay whatever your price is for this. And you'll be amazed at how many people go from like, hey, it's a great idea to like, I'm not going to sign that paper, even though there's no financial commitment. But that like kind of step to getting them to take that idea that you have, putting it on paper and signing it is an additional hurdle that
like you just bust out a contract or like
it's not a
what
contract.
are they signing?
It's just like, hey, like I'm building this product that solves this problem, like, and you're willing to pay $50,000 or whatever the number is to solve that problem, and like you sign it. And why I think that's a good idea is, one is like a lot of people won't sign it, which I think is useful for you to understand, or they won't take that extra step to do it. Two is like when you want to raise VC money, like if you have 10 of those pieces of paper, if like these are my buyers and they're all interested in buying this product that I want to build, and they've at least signed a piece of paper or wrote me an email or whatever it may be that like says that they would do it if I could solve this problem. And probably like 3 out of those 10 will actually buy it once you build it. But I think the point is like kind of going through those extra steps and hurdles with your buyer, showing that you can get that done, and then kind of having that. And then, of course, obviously, once you actually build it, you have 10 people that you can pitch to and kind of go through the process even further. But it's a lot harder than you would think to do that. And I think if you can't do that, like product market fit is very hard. And if you can't get 10 people to just sign a piece of paper, it's going to be tough to build a business around it. Yeah.
So you'd originally come up with the idea to start something out of Asia serving Asian customers.
Yeah.
What advice would you give founders who are trying to do that today? Like, given what you've learned about the Asian software buyer or the Asian security buyer, if you know someone today in 2026 was like, Paul, I think there's a huge opportunity in security. Have you heard of this Mythos thing? You know, like I'm going to go solve this.
Yeah.
You know, would you tell them to start here? Would you tell them to start in Korea? Like, how would you help them think about where the customer opportunity is?
Yeah, there's a really good book called Crossing the Chasm. I don't know if anyone's ever read it. It's very popular in the Silicon Valley space. Actually, at Palantir, at least when I started, you were forced to read it. But it talks about like early adopters. I don't think there's many early adopters in Asia, but basically those are people that are willing to kind of like step into a new category and buy a product from a small business. And those are the people that you need in the early stage, which is why I think that kind of like 10 people signing a piece of paper is important. And there are early adopters in Asia, especially in fast moving sectors like tech. But it is harder here to get people to kind of like use your product at the early stage. But there's less competition as well, right? So I think that's the win-win, the opportunity. So yeah, like in security, I think it depends on what you want to do, right? Like, do you want to build a medium-sized business, you know, potentially VC-backed, but you probably won't be a unicorn, right? And I think it's difficult to do that in security. I don't know of any that have in this region, right? And in the ones that get big in India or even in Singapore, there's 1 or 2 that have just like moved overseas. So to get big, it's tough. Now, can you build a good business here and exit? Yes, but it is hard. But there is less competition too. So I think there's like, what do you want out of your business? Like, what are you trying to do? Are you going I want to be a unicorn or, you know, decacorn or whatever. And then like, yeah, then maybe you should kind of think hard about like whether you want to start it here or not. And you can always set up a US company and then have your team here. I think that's fine. And probably what I would do next is like raise money in the US or have some strategic VCs here and then like build a team here. But, you know, it's a US company. And I think that helps with kind of that early stage. And then you can always come back and build the business here. But
run the Israeli playbook.
Yeah, basically. Yeah, do that. And I think it's worked well for them many, many times over.
Why are they so good at security?
I think I think they kind of have to be at some level. You know, I think there's a lot of kind of pressure on them to sort of invest in security as a culture, as a country. And yeah, I mean the military aspect of it, where they have like specific units that are targeted towards cybersecurity, it does help them a lot. And creating the types of people that can create good companies and solve good hard technical problems. Yeah.
And so do you think there's potential for people to build global companies out of Singapore?
Yes, definitely. But I think it will take longer. Like, I don't think, like the hardest thing for us, like our competitor was Wiz, right? Which, you know, sold for $30 billion to Google. We did not sell for $30 billion, unfortunately. So it is tough when your competitor raises, you know, 100 times more money than you, or maybe even more than that, right? In our case. And like the age old tale of things, especially in security, I think, is like if you're a big CISO of an enterprise, like we used to say this at Palantir, and I think this has changed now, but like no one ever gets fired for hiring IBM, right? And I think in security, it's like no one ever gets fired for hiring the big American company, right? But you know why you might get fired is hiring the local one that messes it up. So I think there's like a different risk there that you're going to have to overcome, and that's hard. Yeah.
Maybe we can talk about the acquisition a little bit.
Yep.
I mean, most venture-backed companies actually do exit through acquisition rather than going public, so it's a much more common scenario. What was that process like, and how did you decide to go down that path instead of raising another round?
Yeah, so I think all the best CEOs in venture, at least in my opinion, are always kind of like prepping for this scenario, right? Because of course, like we all want to go IPO and be up there and ring the bell, but in reality, like statistics show that most of them don't even make it to acquisition, right? So it's really good to have deep partnerships or relationships with people in the same sector, so that like when it's time, you have options, right? So I think like that's one thing that was imbued on me early on, and something that I did throughout the process of keeping relationships with, not necessarily some competitors, some sort of adjacent, and then partners. And in Bitdefender's case, Bitdefender originally was kind of interested in OEMing our product. So they wanted to white label our product as their own, integrate it into their platform, and resell it as Bitdefender branded. We went down that conversation for about a year. We're doing all the technical work. And I think we worked well together, right? So our engineering team meshed very well with their engineering team. And originally they were going to invest in us, but that didn't end up working out because this was like in 2022, end of 2022, going into 2023. And I'm sure you remember this, but there was like a big dip around then, especially in Southeast Asia. A lot of companies started laying off in early 2023, which started affecting our numbers. And then it became Bitdefender kind of moved to like, okay, well, maybe it makes sense just to acquire you. Again, oversimplifying because it was not that easy. But went through the sort of acquisition process, had a little bit of a competitive bid, and then eventually, with the investors, decided on Bitdefender. It was a tough time because of the market kind of going down. So, negotiations were tough, but ended up getting the deal done in the end.
And what was it like to let go of your baby?
Yeah. I don't know. For me, like anytime there's been like some big event in my life, it's never been pure excitement. There's not like that, like, oh my God, like I want to go party now. It was more like, thank God that's over. Because, I think it's like many of you are running or will run your own businesses, but it's, I think Elon Musk said it quite well. It's like you're like looking into the abyss and eating glass, and I think that was my experience. Right, it was pretty terrible a lot of the time. There was a lot of good times, and like the outcome was pretty good, but there's a lot of very rough times throughout that period. So not going to sugarcoat that part. So yeah, I mean, it was more like relief, like thank you, this didn't blow up. And like in our case, like our entire team moved over. Like 95% of our team is still there as part of like Bitdefender Asia, which is what I now run. So I think it was a good outcome for the team. It was a good outcome for the business. Could have been better, sure, but I think I'm happy that something got done. Yeah.
Okay, now this is the meaty part of the conversation, right? So in the last 18 months, right? Everyone has been sort of astounded, like leaps and bounds, the capabilities of the model, and both for good and for bad.
Yeah.
So I guess maybe from where you sit, like what has surprised you most about the model's capabilities from a security perspective?
Yeah, I think, the new vulnerabilities it is finding, I think is the most surprising part. So it's not that, I think previously, AI or just in general, people that set up automation, if a vulnerability comes out, they have the capability to sort of replicate it quickly and then try to exploit it in the wild. But I think the most impressive thing for me is that it's finding new exploits. And I think that is...
Do you have an open claw?
I don't have OpenCloud, but I do use Cowork a lot. Yeah.
Because I feel like we talked a little about this earlier, which is just it's not just people exploiting existing systems, but now that people are launching new agentic systems, that also opens up more surface area for attack.
Yeah, and AI lies, and it does a lot of different things that you don't really know what it's doing, especially depending on how free you're using it. So I think that's scary. And it can make mistakes and it can cause a lot of problems. Like I think there's a couple of incidents where deleted code bases and stuff like that, which is an insider threat, right? So I think that's the concerning part, is letting it loose in your environment, and how are you doing it? But the counterpoint to that is how do you compete otherwise, right? So I think it's a little bit of a catch-22 in terms of how much risk you're willing to tolerate based upon your organization and how fast you can move. If you're small, I think limiting what it has access to is good, but you also got to move fast, right? So I think with business, and especially in an early stage, there's always risk, right? Yeah.
So if you're selling into a CISO right now, who's got people trying to sell them on the other side, agents.
Yeah.
What does that conversation sound like?
Yeah, well, I think a lot of people, some of the big booming stuff for us is AI SPM, which is essentially making sure that your AI can only access things that you want it to access, making sure it only has certain permissions, then constantly checking those permissions, because people can give it more access and may not necessarily understand the sort of repercussions of doing that, especially when a lot of the people that are using it are not AI experts or even engineers in some case. So I think that's a lot of the conversations is AI has been deployed in my organization, but now how do I control it? So I think that's a sector that is booming, and we have a product in that space, or building a product in that space. Then there's consulting around it, which is also booming, of how do I implement AI securely in my org, and a lot of CISOs are concerned about that, and we're building services offerings around that. And then there's the red teaming aspect. We do a lot of red teaming. And a lot of the things that we red team used to be that we're kind of doing calls to get information from the people doing phishing and things like that. But now you can do it a lot through some of the public facing AI interfaces to do a lot of the phishing type work. Yeah.
Where are there opportunities for people to start companies in security?
Yeah. Someone asked me this last week. I think there's a lot of interesting stuff. I don't know that it's pure SaaS anymore. I think there's a lot of interesting things that can be done for consumers. I think Bitdefender we're the number one consumer sort of antivirus provider. I think there's a lot of things that consumers are going to need to be worried about in the long term, that there's opportunities to build good businesses. And that's one business, I think, in Asia that you can do from here globally. Because you can have the capability to do that. I think the other one is around MSPs. MSPs are growing really fast. There's a lot of hot stuff happening in that space. They use a lot of third-party products. There's a lot of integration problems there that can be solved with technology, and I think is really interesting to help them kind of streamline their business and grow it. I've seen a lot of great companies being built out of servicing MSPs, and the margins are good, right? And I think that's a great area to look at. I was telling someone that the other day. But pure B2B SaaS is tough, like B2B security. I think there's a lot of problems. A lot of people are moving really fast. A lot of them are American or Israeli companies that are just raising a ton of money. And I think that's hard to compete with. Yeah. So I wouldn't do that, but it doesn't mean you can't. It just wouldn't be the choice that I would make. Yeah.
I think people have been a little bit depressed in the region recently.
Yeah.
But you don't sound that depressed. You sound pretty upbeat.
Yeah. I had a little coffee before this, but I think, there's always opportunities. Just maybe the opportunity has changed, right? What are the big businesses that we've seen built so far in Southeast Asia? Most of them are consumer businesses. And we were kind of hoping for that B2B wave. Didn't happen as well as people wanted it to. I just think it takes longer here. And there's multiple reasons why. It's the valuations aren't as high, the amount of money, it's not like one country you're tackling, 15 or more. So I think there's things that just make it take longer. We're just not patient yet. I think it will happen. It's just going to take time. But we were talking about this earlier as well. There's a lot of opportunities to build really good businesses that are 10, 100 million in revenue. I think that's really good. Just the $1 billion unicorn, I think is tough here. Yeah.
Yeah. Makes sense. So maybe just to switch gears a little bit, I think one thing that's always useful for people is like lessons learned.
Yeah.
And we talked a little about customers and like validating demand and things like that. What did you learn in building the company?
Yeah.
So like, from kind of like team composition, hiring, what were some of the things that, you're like, gosh, I really wish I'd known that.
Yeah. I think like, well, if you're selling software, not with salespeople, I think there's a lot that if you have never run a sales team before, that is worth spending time learning about. So like how sales compensation works, what you can do to incentivize salespeople, what does a good salesperson do, right? And what does a bad salesperson do? And like, very cliche, but I think like as a sales leader, like, and that's kind of what I'm doing now, I think it's really important to identify when you've hired a bad salesperson, because you for sure will, how to get rid of them quickly. And I think it's difficult to do that. And I would say it's more difficult when you're the CEO versus when you're a VP or whatever. Because when you're the CEO, there's basically no one behind you that you can like blame it on. When you're a VP, it's like, company's changing, like whatever, right? Or like, yeah, it's not performance. So for me, it's easier to do that as an employee than it is as a CEO.
What does a good salesperson look like?
Well, for me, I think it depends on the industry. So you got to like understand the space and the product, right? I think that's hopefully a given. You have to be responsive. Like the simple test that I do with all sales interviews is like, and it sounds stupid, but it's just like, send me your interview or your resume after the interview. And like, how fast do they send it to you? Like, are they sending it right after the interview? They don't send it. Half the people don't send it. But like, I'm not going to hire someone that just can't email me their resume. And then my email's in the Teams invite or whatever invite. But that's like a simple test that I like to do that just like tells me like, are they going to follow up? Like if they can't follow up with me in an interview, like they'll never follow up with a prospect, right? So like, I think that's the big thing. And like how do they get into the process? Is a referral, doing like the painful kind of reference checks, doing blind reference checks as well. If you have a connection to that person or you can kind of like check with someone else about it. I think all those things are important and, they're not fun to do. But like that's what's going to get you good salespeople. Then there's like, are they likable? I think that's like a very important trait for a salesperson. Yeah. So those are like the three things that I look for, like knowledge, responsiveness, and like likability.
Yeah, I think there's also, for people who are early in their businesses, I think there's also a difference between your first salesperson and your 10th salesperson.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes founders who don't like selling want to hire salespeople because they think that then they can stop selling. But then you hire a person who's not meant to be the first salesperson because there's still a lot of discovery work that has to be done. And then it ends up in this sort of negative performance cycle.
Yeah, I think like you can hire, like I wouldn't be as attracted to people that have worked at big companies and done well there because, especially at an early stage, because they have everything for them. They have like sales ops, they have marketing, they have all these different functions that basically do everything. And all they do is they talk to the customer and they kind of coordinate internally. But at an early stage, you need someone that's going to be like, I don't have this marketing piece, like I'm going to build that, right? And that person is different from the first one to the 10th one. And like, it's very hard to find those people because like, as you grow in your sales career, like to go to a startup, the capability to make money you're almost going down, right? Because it is going to be harder to sell your piece of software than it is to sell somewhere else's. So yeah, as she said, like you got to keep selling and you also got to push the salespeople. And I would say like, channel partners is really like Bitdefender is 100% channel. Horangi was more direct. I learned a lot about channel sales, which I think is a great way to get your product to market. In the early stages, you can pay like crazy commissions just to get customers, right? So you pay a channel partner like 60% margin, right? Which sounds crazy, but obviously it's not every year. And hopefully if you're in a recurring revenue model, like they'll get less over time, but you got to get them kind of incentivized to get out there and talk to customers, even commissions for your salespeople. Like it's about getting those customers in the early stage, kind of build that flywheel. And you may need to do stuff like that to get the right salespeople to kind of get that traction early on. And like margin is great. But like you need those customers to really build that flywheel. So I wouldn't be opposed to doing some creative stuff in the beginning. Yeah.
Are there backgrounds that you like in salespeople?
I like people that run their own business. Yeah. Yeah. Cause they understand that they kind of just like need to do anything. Like one of our best salesperson, this guy named Elton, he's now running his like own AI SDR thing, but he had his own events company before he came to work at Horangi. And like the guy was just like hustling, like just every day would be like you'd see his calendar and it would just be like 15-minute meeting, I'm calling these 3 people, and then like 15-minute meeting, calling these people, 1 hour like block where he's like talking to a customer. It's just like, just the amount of rigor that really good salespeople have is impressive. And in his case, after us, he went to Oracle, then he went to Microsoft or Google, then Microsoft, and then he started his own company. So I feel a little proud about that too. But he's like those types of people are what you need, is someone who really wants to hustle, build the business, and like make money. And for him, it was like a good jumping spot. He did 2 years with us, built a business around it, and then jumped. But I still thankful for what he did.
What was the hardest role to hire?
I think in some cases we got lucky. I think engineering's hard. Like finding like a good VP of engineering who can, like the early stage, like having the kind of like hacker who can like put things together is I think almost easier to find than the VP of engineering that can build an engineering team. We were lucky with that hire as well, with Ivan, who's still at Bitdefender with us, but really like building a core, growing the team from like 3 people to 30, kind of growing that. I think that hire is really, really hard, especially here. Yeah.
What are some mistakes that people make in hiring engineers? When hiring maybe a good person, but at the wrong time. We had a couple engineers, fantastic engineers, but they just like couldn't work with other people. I think that's problematic. They're like big dreamers, constantly want to work on cool projects, but sometimes there's cool projects, sometimes there's not. Just ship the checkout.
Yeah, sometimes. But could be a little easier now with Claude. Maybe Claude does the less fun stuff. But I think that can get you as you hire the wrong person at the wrong time. Yeah, I had a couple of those. Yeah.
So do people really need engineers anymore? Now we all have Claude?
Yeah, I think you definitely do. You also need product managers. I think that's like that's another mistake I made, is like I didn't really care about product managers until later on. And I think it's important to have someone that's doing that. They don't necessarily have to be a product manager, but someone that's focused on really finding that like niche. And probably it's going to be you in the beginning, but as you grow, like having someone that's constantly looking for new things to integrate and build and kind of market testing it is important. As well as like we had a relationship with Gartner, which is really important in our space in terms of being listed, and that like being able to talk to them, being able to explain to them to get listed in Gartner, which we eventually did. But like that whole process, which is a journey as well, is important to have someone kind of focused on that, especially in security. Yeah.
Awesome. I think we can sort of wrap up with like, what would your one piece of advice be for the founders in the audience?
Yeah. I mean, it depends on space and stuff, but I mean, just keep going. I mean, it is a slog, like lots of ups and downs. Plenty of times, like I remember like crying in my bed. Grown man, 31 at the time, like just like say like this is all gonna fall apart. Like one thing that helps me, I think, in super stressful situations is just like kind of getting okay with the worst case scenario, which for me at that time was like, I'm gonna move back to the US and live in my parents' basement, which it's not that terrible. I think like, so I think just getting comfortable with the worst case scenario of like, like the company might die. You might have to fire a bunch of people and all that sucks, but just keep pushing and keep trying to do your best. And like I started many companies before Horangi that were not as successful as Horangi. Horangi was not perfect. But it is a journey. You learn something. I've learned so much on that journey. And excited to keep learning, which is, I think, one of the most important things as founders is like always keep learning and try to be humble and grow the business.
Awesome. So I want to open it up for questions. So we have enough time. Sarah's got a mic, and I have 2 hippocorns to give out. First 2 people brave enough to ask a question.
They're very cool.
Oh, the baby's
That's a good idea.
Assistant has a question.
I just had twin boys. They're like 4 months old.
Oh my gosh, you're in it.
Yeah. So I have a new company.
You have an A/B test.
Yes, I do have an A/B test, and they're not identical as well. So they're different. Yeah.
Are you gonna? Do you have any controlled experiments?
Not yet. Yeah, like crying and eating is and pooping is most of the time.
All right, gentleman at the back.
So we're from Canada. I'm a recent founder. I'm building a loan origination platform for commercial real estate. So commercial real estate investors go and ask for funding. to Series B lenders. And this application that I've built essentially makes that entire process really seamless, which is today very, very complex. We are a bootstrap, and we are about to go meet our first client. Our meeting set up for Tuesday. And we are obviously trying to figure out everything that goes around that first meeting, right? How to land the first client. And we haven't done any marketing. So we're at that stage where we know that it's a niche product. The industry needs it. We are the first movers. However, we are obviously skeptical of the fact that we haven't really invested enough. It's bootstrapped, so we don't really have a lot of monetary investments, just sweat equity. Have you been in that situation? Like, when did you know that you wanted to get reinforcements, get money in, hire the right people? What is the base team that you think is required for you to go to market?
I don't know if you have another founder or not, but in my case, it was just me and one other person. I mean, in the first meeting, I mean, I don't know when that meeting is, but in the first meeting, you're just focused on selling yourself because that's what you're selling. Like you don't have much else, right? So like try to build that trust with the person, with you, and like try to kind of bring out that like, I'm going to do everything in my power to make this work. And like, that's what you're selling, right? And I think, certain people will buy into that and certain people won't. Yeah, like in my case, it took like 10 meetings before I got one that was kind of willing to give us money from a customer perspective. So I would just like manage your expectation around that, but go hard. Like go in there selling yourself, selling your background and experience, why you want to solve this problem. And hopefully if they're taking the meeting, they probably also see the problem. So yeah, I mean, just remember that that's what you're selling at this stage, and you're selling your sweat equity and hard-earned effort. In the early stages, a lot of people have done different ways of doing this. I think there's a lot of the companies in certain sectors will get advisors. I think it can help. They also don't help sometimes. It depends on the advisor, but those types of things help. But I don't think there's anything wrong with bootstrapping. I mean, VC money is helpful in a lot of ways. Like obviously, you can build first. You have a bit of a reputation and a bit of like a sort of bravado to bring to those meetings because someone else has already like basically pre-vetted you. But customers do the same thing. And I think if you have reference customers and those types of things, it can be just as good as a good VC. No offense, backing you.
No. The best money is customer money.
Yeah. And they don't take equity to the customers. So I think that's the good piece. So I think a customer funded business is not a bad thing, and a lot of businesses are built that way. And yeah, I mean, if you can do it, it's great. And then you can still get VC money later as well, right? So like, yeah. I think like you can sell especially in that space, I think you can sell the idea and you could probably get a loan done without any technology, right? And then also in going, again, I don't know your experience, but if you've been through that process 1,000 times, you may know what to build already. But in going through that process with customers, like you will learn so much more of like what they care about, because it may not necessarily be what you think they care about. And like if you're building it for the company, like those types of things and integrations, like you'll learn a lot from those early customers and conversations. And they want the build partner in you to like build around them, right? So I think that you can do it by yourself, right? And Claude enables you to prototype pretty quickly, right? So like I think that's one of the big things is you don't need a full-on engineering team at the beginning. Yeah, no worries.
Who's our second Braves?
Thanks for that, man. There's definitely a time or two when I texted my mom asking her if my childhood room is still a room. So definitely related to that. So you talked a bit about bad salespeople. So I have a hypothetical for you wherein you have a salesperson that's like hitting their numbers and they're beating it. But they have like a bunch of bad habits that won't really translate well. And I'm talking about like your first three. So like, when you're in like the pre-seed stage, you just do whatever it takes to make it work. But like when you're in the Series A, you need a system, you need CRM, maybe you need proper documentation and stuff. How do you handle that, especially if they're not really open to like changing their ways?
Yeah, I mean, it's tough, right? Like with salespeople is like the one where I could argue that like maybe keeping them is not as terrible as it would be in other parts of the organization, especially if they're hitting their number. Well, I would ask like, is their number like higher than others? Would be like one question. But yeah, like, I mean, I think with salespeople, it's tougher. Like I definitely had salespeople that rub people the wrong way, but they just like, for whatever, like rub internally the wrong way, but they would do like 2 times their number. And like, that's a harder problem, right? Like I think in other functions, you can kind of like be like, okay, like, yeah, like maybe it's not worth the friction, but with sales, it is harder. And, frankly, some of the good salespeople aren't always like the easiest people to get along with, right? Because they are like a little bit like they have to be super process oriented. They have to be fast. Everything is urgent, and there's a reason why that they're selling. So it's a bit about that. I think also one thing that I did that I thought really helps is like getting everyone excited about deals. So like when deals are won, a lot of people historically, I think especially in engineering, like don't like salespeople, and I try to change that because like ultimately like engineers are building the stuff, but it's not easy to sell it. Like so many companies die because of bad GTM, and you got to celebrate those sales wins. And I also like would put engineers in the meetings as well. So they like, for me, especially at Palantir, like understanding the customer's pain was such an important part of like the company's success. And that's like why forward deployed engineering is now like basically the only thing you see on LinkedIn. So I think that's the same as like getting the engineering with the salespeople, if that's who's complaining about them, and working to understand that. And yeah, also understanding that really good salespeople sometimes are like not the easiest people to get along with. Like I think that happens often. Yeah, but in terms of like whether you fire them or not, I probably wouldn't, as long as they weren't like a complete, I don't know what I can say on here, but asshole or whatever, right? But like, yeah. And you can manage it. If you can't manage it, then like, yeah, maybe you have a separate conversation, or you bring in other salespeople and they're all hitting their quota, and you're like, okay, I can get rid of one. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for the talk. Very insightful. My question, similar to the gentleman from the back, we're early stage founders and we're doing B2B sales for hotels. And then we just got our first customer that's actually willing to try out and do it. And what they said to us on the call, we were trying to decipher together, but they're like, okay, we're willing to bet on you. We did what you said, like, I'll work my ass off for you just to make this happen. And they're like, oh, give us, maybe like we can build it together for like 3 to 6 months. And then after that, we'll start paying you. Is that something that you're okay to consider, let's say at an early stage? Or like, what should we consider about that?
Yeah, no problem. And I think it's great that they're willing to do that. I would highly recommend for both of you, like meet them in person, like, and spend time with them, right? Like take them to coffee, take them to dinner, like whatever. Like I'm big on that. And like, yeah, like just spend time with them. Like you want them to kind of like feel bad if they have to say no. So like, do spend time with them, like do all that stuff. And yeah, I think there's no problem. I mean, in an ideal world, of course, they just buy it and give you the money and start using it. But I think in reality, that's like almost never the case. So especially if you don't have like big branding already from VCs or whatever. So yeah, I think there's no problem. I would like try to get them to like commit to some window of like, these are the problems that you need to solve for them before they pay you, instead of a time frame. So it's like, because maybe you can do it faster than that. So if it's like, I need to list all my rooms on whatever system, I don't know, hotel as well, but find those like hurdles that are tied to the payment instead of time. Because it's easy to extend time. It's not easy to extend like an execution. And like for you, you want to drive value for them. They want the value as well, but tie it to those like sort of technical hurdles or wins for them.
I would also set a price, and you can give them like a discounted price for the first year because they're the first one, but definitely set a price so that, when a time comes, you're like, oh no, okay, like you already got the discount. Now we're back at the rack rate.
They're not just going to slip you a 20 at the end. Like, give them a price for sure. It's good advice.
Yeah.
Hi, Paul. I'm Shubham. Thank you for the discussion. It was very insightful. My startup, we work with large banks. We have a trade finance and a supply chain financing platform. We're doing cross-border trade finance and domestic supply chains. My question is majorly around two-part. One is your experience with Horangi in this space in Asia and Singapore. Were you dealing with larger financial institutions or larger corporates as your clients? And at that time, you mentioned it was like a little more SaaS kind of a thing. So what were like sales cycles like? So that's one. And then now that you have moved to Bitdefender, you might still be interacting with these large institutions. Generally in this region or Singapore, how are these sales cycles and timelines in terms of starting and initiation conversations and closing? Generally, what has been your experience?
ACV with Horangi was like around 30K. And we did have some big customers. I would say typical sales cycle was like 60 to 90 days for that 30K. We also did services, and the sales cycle was much shorter for that. I think services used to be a bad word in VC, but I think that word is now like exciting for them. So it used to be like everyone would be like, why do you have a services business? It's terrible. And now like everyone is taking services and turning it into software, which is what we were trying to do. But so like I think if you can embed services, if it makes sense for your business as part of that, like I think you can get that sales cycle down to help them do it. So the second part of the question was about the banks. We do work with a lot of banks. Usually we have like first tier banks, but majority of them are kind of like the second tier banks, which I think is a great segment. They move a little faster. They don't have all the huge vendors courting them as much, still a little bit, but not as much. And I find that there's a really good niche in there for to sell them like good software products and help them solve problems that I think they're like, it's a lot harder with like the DBSs of the world. But the second tier banks in like Indonesia and Thailand, like those ones like will move and can make change quicker. And I think like the organizations are a bit more interested in implementing tech. So we had a lot of success in like those types. Yeah. I think in reality, a majority of the sort of attacks that are successful that we see is still like basic stuff. So I think like all the agentic stuff is like sexy and everyone wants to talk about it and say that it's the future. And I think it like government to government, it probably is the future. But in B2B space, like the stuff that we see is like people are getting phished, right? And that phishing leads to something bigger. Like at Bitdefender, we focus a lot on like a lot of the attackers focus on living off the land attacks. So the attackers don't even like do ransomware directly anymore. They like break in. And there's like an organized crime around this. They like sell the access to other people, and then those people will do like the damage internally. So yeah, like I think it's still the basic stuff that most companies aren't doing correctly that is getting them in trouble. It's like not training your people, not like locking the doors, like not having 2FA. You still see that happen where companies don't have 2FA. Well, please just turn that on. Like if you're using AWS or whatever, just turn 2FA on. It reduces your risk significantly. And turn 2FA on everything you can, right? And I think those things are going to reduce your risk significantly. But a lot of people don't do that. And those are the ones that are getting broken into like 90% of the time. Of course, there are large organizations with sophisticated attacks. But and that stuff is interesting, and you know there's gangs that target those organizations, but majority of what we see is just phishing into like some random sort of attack, and then they deploy ransomware and extract money. Yeah, so there's nothing exciting. Sorry.
Are Singaporeans more susceptible to scams than other populations?
I think they're just targeted more because of the high sort of value, right? They have a high ACV, so the attackers want it.
I have a follow-up question.
Yeah.
So recently with this whole launch of Claude Mythos and Anthropic setting up like 100 organizations to solve their internal issues, but there are million organizations all across. Are you also seeing, I mean, my point is the moment Mythos comes out, maybe those 100 organizations which worked initially are okay, but then certainly all others get exposed to all those threats which that set initially is right now trying to solve. Are companies, although this is open news, but are large banks, institutions, are they actually caring that, JP Morgans and all are in a room with Anthropic and solving this? But I don't think so anybody's doing with DBS, UOB, OCBC, and they are also as big as banks, right? And then go all across ASEAN. And what are the ways this needs to be even handled or not handled?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's tough, right? Because like you start to see a lot of industry-wide sort of collaboration. I mean, the banks have been doing it on many different things, like data sharing, all this stuff, money laundering, and 10 years ago was a big thing with the large banks where they were like trying to share data. Palantir was part of that. So I think, like how much they can effectively do given the size of those companies and how much bureaucracy is within them is, I'll be amazed if they can do anything meaningful in a short amount of time. But yeah, it is important to have access to AI and be a part of the change from any company's perspective, especially the large ones. And I think if you're not trying, then you're falling behind, right? So I think it is interesting that they've only chosen like 50 to 100 companies instead of kind of like making a larger working group. But that's probably just the start. Like I hope that they'll open up to more companies to collaborate and kind of make change. And I think there's a lot of interesting things that can happen on the open source side as well. But like it is a little like, hey, we just chose these 50 companies and that's interesting. I don't know the reason why, but how the other banks compete is going to be a problem. I imagine that's a business opportunity though, as well. Like how do those banks kind of solve the same problems? You can still use the model, but have people working on it at least regionally. that's an interesting problem that there could be consortiums around. That is a good way to build value, actually. Yeah.
Awesome. Please join me in thanking Paul for his time.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming.
Yeah. Thank you.